Your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
My name is Quincy and I am your host for this wonderful festivity this afternoon. The joy of doing this show is that I get to have conversations with an incredible array of interesting Bahamians and residents of the Bahamas, people who have deep perspectives and who have something to say that will enlighten our listeners and perhaps cast a new light on something that we've long considered. And today, I'm especially excited to have as my guest someone that I first met pursuing a personal passion of mine, which is the Data Commission and Freedom of Information regime in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so my guest is the first Data Protection Commissioner. Was she the first? I believe. She can correct me. And then subsequently, there was a role for her in the political directorate, in the political arena, whether or not it was as a candidate, and so she can speak to us from a number of different platforms. And we're going to cover a good bit of ground today. We're going to talk about what it's like to be an independent candidate, what it's like to seek a party nomination, how much it costs to run a campaign. We're going to talk about freedom of information and data protection, and we're going to talk about the state of women in Bahamian politics. And we're going to talk about South Africa, which is a sort of historic constituency. It has been one of those constituencies that we traditionally pay close attention to because it's almost totemic in terms of its significance to the Progressive Liberal Party's parliamentary history. And so today, to have that wonderful, broad, far-flung, widespread conversation with us, I'm pleased to welcome to the Political Review the inimitable Charmaine Barrington Austin. Charmaine, hello.
Hi, Quincy. It's certainly great to be on with you today. As you said, we met at a certain time in my career, and I would like to say we became great friends.
Charmaine, you did always enjoy it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we became great friends, and I just want to say good afternoon, Bahamas. It's my pleasure to be here with you on the Political Review.
Charmaine, the first question I want to ask is this, right? Okay, so we're going to get to the high, wonderful policy-driven conversation in a minute. But before I forget, I want to ask what's going on in South Africa. I mentioned it last because South Africa is, that it is, like I said, it's an inspection to the PLP. Mm-hmm. And certainly what's been going on there lately in the PLP is it's eyebrow raising. So as someone with an interest in the South African constituency, and who has run before the representative, what do you know that we should probably know?
You're asking me, what do I know? I'm sorry, you're kind of breaking up. What do I know about?
I'm sorry, you froze just a little bit. Yeah, so did you hear the question?
No, you said, what do I know about?
Oh, yeah, I know. My question was just, what do you know about what's going on in South Africa?
Well, actually, I'm following it quite intently, as I think most of our people are doing, watching the political season now, and we can see that we're in full trust, as we say, of the political season. You're quite right in that South Andros, of course, is historic in the nation. We know that South Andros gave the nation its first prime minister in the person of Sir Lyndon Pimlin. And so, of course, we know that it has a role to play going forward. What I do know is that the current member of parliament has indicated that he will not be seeking re-election in 2022. I think he made that announcement sometime last week in the House of Assembly, appearing, of course, to caught his leaders by surprise. And I heard him say from his own mouth and that he's taking his last political breath, and that his names, of course, will not be mentioned in the political circle ever again. We know that Mr. Forbes has served for 3 consecutive terms, and of course, people would say that he has continued the long-serving South Androsian members of parliament. We know that he followed Sir Lyndon, who had 25 years. And of course, Mr. Forbes has 15 years. And I did put out a statement from our independent movement to Mr. Forbes, bidding him farewell. And I've said, and I would indicate and reiterate that many Androsian sons and daughters are capable of rising to the occasion. And we see that that is what is happening now. I'm understanding a number of Androsians are expressing their interests in the area. And of course, following in the footsteps of Sir Lyndon, of course, the father of the nation, I would imagine that the Progressive Liberal Party would want to hold on to that seat. And I would also know that the current administration, Prime Minister being from Andros, Fresh Creek to be exact, which falls within the South Andros constituency, I think he would have great interest in perhaps capturing that constituency for the first time. And so it's really exciting. I'm most excited, though, for the people of Andros and South Andros, of course, who stands to benefit from having a very good and true representative to represent them. You see? And so we look to see what will happen. And I think the only thing we're waiting on now is the PLP now to name its nominee. We know we have Kendrick Smith from the Free National Movement who has expressed an interest there, and they have ratified him. So I'm watching with interest as well.
When you say you're watching with interest as well, I know you asked before.
Yes.
How do I interpret
I'm watching with interest because I've always indicated that as an Androsian, I will always champion the cause of my people. I will always be around to hold whomever is elected feet to the fire, as I always do. I believe that my people deserve, as I said, good and proper representation. I am very interested in seeing the candidates that emerge. If those candidates are persons I feel who will bring true representation and great representation to the people, then of course I'm willing to support and lend support where necessary. However, if I feel at the end of the day those candidates do not or cannot bring good and proper representation to the people, it's always open to me, I think, or any other Androsian who's willing to step up to the plate and represent their people.
The majority of people outside of South Africa are looking at what's going on there with some level of surprise, given that Mr. Forbes was returned returned to Parliament twice by that constituency for three consecutive terms. The question has to be, what would make a successful MP choose to breathe his last political breath and take his last political steps? But I don't know if you have any insight on it.
I of course, one is not in the mind of Mr. Forbes. I think he indicated quite clearly in his communication to Parliament. And I think outside what were his reasoning, I would just only add that and bring our focus back to the fact that these, I think, the whole issue should be surrounding the people. And I think sometimes in our discussions, we get personal. We relate these constituencies to individuals, forgetting that it's really the interests of the people that we have got to serve. It's about the people and those constituents in South Andros and what they want and who will best serve their interests. And I believe we have to always pay attention to that we don't lose sight of the people in the equation. Even with me, I'm always asking my supporters, what do you want? What should happen? What steps should I take? And you go according to the wishes, I think, generally of the people, save that there is something, egregious that you cannot accede to the request of the constituents. And I think a lot of times we are moving away from that. We're acting as if constituencies actually belong to the individual members of parliament. I've said before that members of parliament are employees. They are employed by the people. And the people, as the employer, they give their performance review. As rightly any employee get their performance review. And if they find that a particular member of parliament, be it Mr. Forbes or any other member of parliament is wanted, then it's for those people then to grade those persons and decide whether or not they want to rehire. And I've said before, oftentimes, you would never have a problem being rehired in most cases where you have an outstanding employee. Most people are anxious and quick to rehire outstanding employees. So I don't want to get into PLP business. As you know, the chairman has issued a statement and say everybody must stay out of PLP business. So I want to stay out of PLP business, except to say that, I wish Mr. Forbes well. He's an Androsian. All those who are Androsians and interested in serving their people, they will serve the people, Quincy, whether they're in the parliament or out. And that is the true test. That is the true test of service, when people are able to serve their people with or without a title in or outside of parliament. And so we see a lot of people saying, oh, well, I want to serve my people. But you can serve your people outside of the parliament. And so I like to look at the record of those people outside of the parliamentary term. And I say, if you didn't do anything outside of your parliamentary term before your people, it is likely that you will not do it while you're there, and worse, after you've gone. See, and so it's always self-serving in some cases where persons are just coming to the forefront because they want to sit in that parliamentary seat, but it's really not about the people, and it must always be about the people.
Do you, as South Andros, I guess, booster and sometime resident, even though you're in Nassau now, do you know whether or not Mr. Forbes, and this, I guess, is my last question.
Yeah, because I just
he's a friend of mine, so I'm trying to be, I don't want to, but did he do a good job as an MP? Was he a good MP? Do you know?
Well, I think the majority of Androsians will have to answer that question as an observer. The mere fact that, of course, we are at the point where we are would indicate to me that perhaps persons may have indicated a certain positions to his party, and that is why perhaps we are saying what we are saying. I would hate to think that the party acted arbitrarily just on its own. I know from my own experience with party politics is that they do canvassing of the ground. They do see how your supporters, whether they're supporting you. And so I think in the long term, history will have to judge Mr. Forbes based on his record. And so I would want to leave that there.
Yeah, Yeah, you mentioned the next subject that I wanted to raise with you. This question of your brush with party politics, and then again your decision to go it alone, so to speak, and strike out and be an independent candidate. Wally, I want to take that break that we talked about now. And when we come back on the other side of this break with Sharmi Farrington Austin, we'll get into some of the considerations that face a person who wants to serve, about whether or not the party is the way to go, or whether or not independence is the way to go. There.
Yes, sure.
So we'll see you on the other side of this break, Wally. Let's take that break now.
Don't let your children get left behind. Get them immunized. They need immunization to protect them from some diseases, to get into school, and to apply for some jobs. Contact your nearest clinic or healthcare provider to make an immunization appointment today. Protect their health and their future. Remember, immunizations are free at all government healthcare facilities. Prevent disease. Immunize, please.
This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
It's happening, and it's all straight talk with no chaser. As Stephen Miller is unleashed on your radio each weekday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. right here on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. It's going to be smart talk, idea, and innovation. Each weekday, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. only on Guardian Radio, your station for fresh news and smart talk. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this.
Loss of family members is very isolating, and people who have experienced loss appreciate when others have shared their grief. If you can't be there in person, go to the Nassau Guardian's website online at thenassauguardian.com and visit our obituary link. The Nassau Guardian's interactive obituary link allows you to read the funeral, express condolences, or place photos on the online guest book for 1 full year. Losing a loved one is painful, but that pain isn't the worst thing to happen. Friends, loved ones, colleagues, and neighbors who ignore the loss compound the pain. Should the bereaved family wish to place the obituary and photos on our obituary site, just contact the Guardian's funeral industry partners or the Nassau Guardian. Remember, there isn't one magic right thing to say to someone experiencing loss that will make the loss less painful or easier to bear. The Nassau Guardian's obituary link, available online at thenassauguardian.com.
Are you interested in the Bahamian economy? How about tips to improve your financial literacy? Tune into Guardian Radio's newest financial podcast series, C-File Talks. The podcast will provide listeners with their weekly dose of economic issues and solutions and keys to financial freedom. C-File Talks will be hosted by Rix, here to give honest and beneficial advice. You won't want to miss the C-File Talks podcast series, Monday evenings from 6:30 to 7 p.m. here on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Political Review. My name is Quincy Parker. I am joined today by Sharmi Farrington Austin, and you can follow our conversation by going to the Guardian Talk Radio website. That's www.guardiantalkradio.com, and you can listen to us, the live stream there. Of course, we're live on Guardian Talk Radio 96.9 FM now, and I believe there may be even a Facebook feed that's somewhere. The social media complications sometimes escape me. But we were saying to Sharmi Farrington Austin that we have a couple of questions about what one goes through as a wannabe member of parliament, particularly in terms of seeking the nomination for a political party versus deciding to do it as an independent. I think that this particularly important discussion right now, when there are so many people who are still struggling, because there are a couple of seats that haven't been, ratified yet. So technically, there's still room for some people. And then, of course, there's a whole raft of candidates. So what was it like for you to try to get a nomination for the party?
Well, I get this all the time. And, to be quite honest, I make it plainly clear that I would have only applied to a party once, and that would have been, I believe, sometimes in 2011 to be exact. And that was, of course, with the Progressive Liberal Party. I had made, on the request again of the residents of South Andros, they had petitioned for me to put in an application to the party, and that was provisional in that I had indicated to the party if they were not minded to run its then incumbent. Because to be quite honest, if we are honest, from then, residents in South Andros were asking, another representation. And so, of course, being very knowledgeable about the party's position and how they usually treat their incumbents. They usually give them first up. And so I made it manifestly clear that if they were not minded to go with the incumbent, then I would step in. Because, of course, as I said, at the forefront of every decision I made with respect to politics is always the plight of my people. Of course, in 2012, the party went with Mr. Forbes, and of course, he was successful. Post 2012, of course, I would have gotten involved in party politics, and then I actually went into government service, one would say, public office as the Data Protection Commissioner, which brought on politics for me. Because, of course, if you know me, one know that I am a true professional. And so while I was the Data Protection Commissioner, I totally functioned as such, the Data Protection Commissioner of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I did not serve one particular constituent. I was not serving the PLP, the FNM, or the DNA. I was serving the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And so, of course, I was looking forward to a career, of course, in that. And I would like to think or hope that I did sufficiently well for the people of the country. And of course, I've always struggled with the call to public office, Quincy. It was something that I battled from child. People would always tell me, you're called to public office. Having come through a political family, seeing what my father went through, I didn't necessarily want to come to front. And I think I stanch against it as long as I could. But the call came very, very strong in July, I think, of 2016. The call came very, very strong. And I knew that I had to answer the call to service. And I knew that I really had a strong feeling or regards for the people of South Andros. And I really am interested in their plight and their well-being. And so, of course, I ventured out. I had to make the decision knowing what I know about party politics and the fact that once there is an incumbent, that the presumption is that the incumbent will run. And so, of course, the factors that really played into my decision then was number one, I really wanted to be an example for other young people and other persons who want to serve their country. And I feel that if your call is so strong that you know that you're called to service, that it will go beyond party politics, then you have to consider your option of running as an independent. So I did not want to put the party in the position where they had to choose between even an incumbent and myself. And otherwise, too, I felt strongly that the country needed something different. I think that we needed new vision. This is what I'm still thinking. I'm still looking for the next big idea, the great idea. As you know, I'm a strong nationalist. I strongly believe in the change of the system of government. And these are the things that really shaped my decision to run as an independent, to be able to really speak for my people, devoid of the machinery of the party, the whip, as you know, that comes along with party politics. And I really want to represent the plight of my people and to put forward their view as opposed to the party view. So in shaping or determining how or who I would run with, those are the factors. And then, of course, playing on my mind then too was the fact that I was the data commissioner of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas previously, and I had made certain decisions, and I never wanted people to have the idea that politics played on any decision that I made in the office at that time. And I think the right fit was for me to run as an independent. And having run as an independent, Quincy, I can tell you, I found also for me as a minister of the gospel, as you know, I'm an ordained evangelist. I found that it was the perfect fit because then I didn't have any challenges regarding my faith, regarding my belief, regarding my morals. I could really just go to my constituents and, hear their views and make an informed decision devoid of what the party position was. So it was the perfect fit.
There is a lot in what you are not saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if I'm going to press it just a little bit.
Ask me.
You talked about the fact that running as an independent relieved you of the potential for conflict with your ethics and morals. And do you believe that the party or running on a party platform would force you to compromise in those regards?
We've seen that. I mean, we've seen that a lot in recent time. We see that, for instance, may I just use the VAT issue, where we saw representatives from the inner city, where they had to take a particular position based on what their moral conscience was or what their conscience was and what their constituents were saying. And they voted according to their conscience and their constituents. And then we saw where the party had a particular position and the party whip was on. And as a result, they were all terminated, its position. And so, yes, sometimes as a member of parliament, you may have a particular different view, and your constituents may have a different view from the party. And we know, I always quote this as the Attorney General quoted, your vote in the party is mortgaged to the party. And so as a party candidate, then we see, even when we're following proper cabinet procedure, it goes deep, because the only time a cabinet minister ought to go against their government, the only recourse available to them is for them to resign. They cannot. Once that position is established in cabinet, and that's called collective responsibility, the cabinet minister is obligated to go along the position of the party line. And then when it comes to the legislature, we see so much that the executive in this country is overlapping with the legislature. And so those same executive that formulate the policies and bring it to the legislature, where it's supposed to be held accountable, those are the same people formulating the policies and then turning around and voting on the same policies they formulate. And so you can get a lot of overlapping in party politics. Then the whip comes on in the House, and the government whip say the whip is on, and all the members are required to follow that whip. Follow me, Quincy. You see, then we go further. So now the member of parliament who's seeking to get the party nomination, they don't necessarily want to irritate the party because it's still that same machinery largely that the member who's seeking to be nominated has to rely on. And we see that, of course, the prime ministers, they have a lot to say about who get those party nominations. And so, yes, the system, the party system is something we have to revamp our constitution and the way we do governance in this country. I would really like to see a separation, a clear separation of the executive and the legislature, which will enable ministers of Quincy to focus on the national issues and their national department, and would allow members of parliament to focus on their constituency. So yes, I do believe a lot of times, to your question, that the party would put the individual members in a position. We see that with the Christian members of parliament, even now, the public complaining that they can't hear from them. And I question whether or not the fact that they can't hear from them is the fact that their voices are silenced, because the party machinery really do silence you, really do put the whip on those persons.
So, as a group of people trying to sort through what's going on in this general election, how are we supposed to choose if the individuals who are coming to us are so constrained at whatever the party platform is that they cannot tell us what they really think?
That's right. I believe that this is a serious time in our country. It's a turning point where I believe that the electorate must look at the individuals. They must look at the candidates. They must select those people who are strong enough to represent them, to represent their views, and also strong enough to stand. I said it earlier that, when you're dealing with party politics, really, when that whipply, it is really the choices between your constituents and the party. And I think going forward, we must put the emphasis on our constituents. We must be about the people of this Commonwealth of the Bahamas and their needs. And of course, we need to change the system, which will enable, I think, the member of parliament to really bring forward their views, the views of their constituents. I'm a big fan, as you know, changing the system and moving more towards a republic, and at the very least, a hybrid system of government in the Bahamas. I note that our sister Caribbean country, Barbados, is moving full speed ahead with that. And so I believe that we were once leaders, Quincy. This is the thing too. We were once leaders in Caribbean. People followed the Bahamas. I'd like to see the Bahamas get back to the place where we are seen as the leaders in the region, indeed, and also looked upon as the world as the best. The whole country's enjoyed that. And I think to some degree, we have lost that footing. And I think we need to move back into that. And the best way to do that is to start crafting our own future. Let me just say this. It's disappointing to me as a citizen that even now we're like less than a year and a little bit over elections, general elections, where we're mandated to have general, and we do not see the visions really of these parties, and they bring them out very, very, late. I don't know if it's intentional, but most of the time we're not even able to digest these visions. And so most of the time we don't even know where we're headed. This is the disappointment. We would have thought that in this 21st century Bahamas, that we would have had there are vision plans already out where citizens should now be plans and digesting them and looking to see whether or not they're viable. But we see even to this day, not one of them have brought out their vision as yet. I know that I think it's Bahamian Evolution and the Coalition for Independence. They have Vision 2025, and you can read that. But outside of that, you can correct me. I don't know if any of them have come with their vision as yet. How are we supposed to take that?
We to take that as, well, let me rephrase, because I was about to make a didactic statement. I apologize to all of my listeners who occasionally accuse me of giving my opinion as though it were fact. So let me make a very clear distinction. In my opinion, we are intended to not know what their vision is. That is the only reason that it takes so long. When a party has, first of all, the PLP released our plan in 2012. They had 5 years of governance under Perry Christie. They lost the government, and they've had 4 years now under Hubert Minnis. And in 9 years, they have not yet been able to produce a document that states what their vision is of the Bahamas. That's unbelievable.
It's really crazy.
It's not believable. For the Free National Movement, they published a manifesto in 2017 that was based on what was published in 2012, and they've had for the same 4 years the PLP has had to refine that document and come up with a new document that said, based on this, here's where we're going to go with that. And the fact that a year away from a general election, the two major political parties who will be spending tens of millions of dollars to try to win a general election are going to ask people once again not to vote for policies, not to vote for ideas, not to vote for where the vision is that we intend to take you, but they're going to ask people simply to vote for who they like most and who is better on an election stage, who gives a better speech, who rallies the crowd more hype. And I think in 2022, frankly speaking, I think both parties are in for a very because this is not the time for that. I think people have been for a while tired of the same old. But I think the number of people who are tired of the same old is going to reach critical mass in 2022. And they're going to demand a different kind of campaign. And if you don't give them what they want, they can tell you, pick up your Georgie bundle and go home.
Yes. Well, see, this is it. Of course, as you said, we're now dealing with a more enlightened electorate. We have technology, things that persons were able to conceal, they're no longer able to do so. And of course, the world is open. And so the electorate expects a whole lot more now from the member and I believe this is one of the things that I've said I found very disappointing in the fact that here we are in the 21st century world. We, in my mind, seemingly the last time we heard about moving to, of course, first world status, I remember that specifically in one of the 1987 election. That was the last time we heard about the country moving to the first world status. And somehow in my mind, we fell asleep at the wheel as a people, as a nation. And I think it's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to produce a Bahamas that our young people are going to be proud, that provides opportunities, a greater level of opportunities for our young generation. And of course, we're talking about ownership. We hear that word a lot, not just in talk, but really we need to provide opportunities that will create entrepreneurs, and that will give this to the young people in the hands of the young generation. And I think for me, this is one of the things that I'm looking for. For the party to attract persons like myself. Again, we've got to hear this whole concept of ownership. What is going to happen with respect to economic independence? Will it just be a token, something that they splash on their manifestos again, or will real opportunities be given? And in seeking to craft out economic ownership, the whole thing about what is going to happen with our natural resources. How are we going to diversify our economy? How are we going to use, Quincy, what we have in our hands now? What is it that we have in this country now that we can sell to the world, and that we can mass produce, that the world wants? These are the kind of tough questions and issues we have to start into this purely political rhetoric, the political rah-rah, and that, as you correctly say, there's really no place for that type of politicking now in this new Bahamas. And so in the new Bahamas, we're looking forward to economic independence.
Economic independence is, it's fascinating that you use that term. The business of running a campaign is an expensive business.
Mm-hmm.
You hear people talk about what it takes to win in a constituency, and in some of the big ones, with
Yes.
6,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
numbers are astronomical. So having done it, let me ask you, how much does it cost to run a campaign?
Well, like you said, rightly so, it all depends on some are smaller, some are bigger, and sometimes some of the constituencies have different needs and different requirements. I've often heard the term $250,000 being thrown around very, very loosely. But let me say this, Quincy, I often say this: there is no amount of money you can put on a person who has vision. Vision has to be the new goal going forward for the country. I am really a candidate who really don't believe in this handout Santa Claus mentality. I believe in investing in your people, empowering them. When I ran as a candidate, you'd find that most of the programs that I did empowered the community. They were community-based programs. They were programs that all of the constituents could have participated in. Whether they were scholarship, whether it was community center, whether it was breakfast programs designed. Of course, right now we have an Andros People page that brings together the whole entire community of Andros on Facebook. More than 6,000 Androsians. We discuss policies that affects Andros, and we've been very effective in that. So I say vision is the new goal. Nothing replaces a person with vision now. We're not naive. We do know that in this country, there's a handout mentality. Everybody wants a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that is perpetuated, of course, by especially the bigger parties. They don't pay any attention to the voters, in my estimation, because precisely that. They know that when it comes to election time, when the money start floating and they start giving these, as people say, the proverbial T-shirt, wrapped, and that the voters are going to need that. It really, really comes down to your integrity. I met people on the campaign trail who told me point blank, right out, we love you, we want to vote for you, we're waiting on you. And I taught this story often of coming to one of the polling division in Andros at a very late time on election day, and I met a number of young men just assembled, and they said, we're waiting on you, what you going to do? We really want to give you this. You know what I mean? We really believe you have what it takes. And at that point, it really comes down to your integrity, whether you are going to preserve your integrity or whether or not you are going to play in what I call the game of politics. The game of politics where the big parties, especially the incumbent government, is going to roll out programs, days before the general election. You're going to have the 52 weeks program. You're going to have the paving of the roads. You're going to have contracts being signed. These are the things that we are faced with in this country. And I constantly say, our fathers, some Milo and those, had it been for money, we would still be oppressed because the Bay Street boys were the ones with the monies, right? And so we had to develop a conscience within the people that say, look here, you can take their flower or deny their flower, but you need to vote for the empowerment of your people. And so at the end of the day, to lift us out from where we are, we're going to have to educate the electorate. That is a big challenge, as you know, getting people and changing their mindset to understand that you've got to be integral. You've got to get to the point where you're voting for your children and the future of your children. And you've got to look at that candidate that can put your children and your future generations of Bahamians in a better place, in a place of empowerment. Because let's face it, when you get, as the young people say, when you get that little thing, Quincy, trust me, that's gone that same night or a couple of days later. You don't see the MP until the next time because they know that they can buy you. So we have to get to a point in this country with campaign reform, finance, that's it. Get into the 21st century world where civilized nations are introducing campaign finance reform legislation. It's been promised time and time again, but we never get it. And we're on the heels of another election, and I believe that legislation is catching dust.
So what do we do, Shami? I mean, the fact is, you're right. This administration promised campaign finance reform right away. They say we're going to get in, and among the first things we're going to do is enact campaign finance reform. We're about to go into the election again. And anyway, we'll come back to that.
No, but campaign finance reform is so important. And I think the citizens ought to really demand that the government deliver. I heard Minister Quincy, I think that is the Minister of State for Finance, saying that the government is not keen to rush into election, a snap election, because they want to deliver on some of their promises. Well, I'm hoping that under the electorate should demand that they bring campaign finance reform. If they do not deliver on their promises, I've often said, you're being judged on your record. And so if you say you're going to deliver these things and you don't deliver them, then you leave the electorate with no choice except to vote you out. That's my view.
It is as plain and simple as that.
Absolutely.
But the challenge comes when the electorate starts playing for itself, starts playing the what can I get game.
Because Quincy, let's just face it, the only time the poor people of the Bahamas have an opportunity to hold their elected representative accountable is when the general election comes around. All of a sudden, you can get them on all of their phones and you can get almost anything from them. And so I call it the politics of trick and treat, you know what I mean? They trick you into voting for them, and then near to the election, then they treat you. And so you get some goodies just to put them back there. And we have to find the willpower within ourselves, as I said, as a people. If we want to advance this country, if we want to take this country further, we're going to have to develop the willpower, take their treats, because really it's your money. It's the taxpayers' money anyway. So take the treats and do what you have to do to put representatives in there that will represent you, that will listen to your voices, that will come into your community, see the needs of your community. A lot of these people, Quincy, who are representing certain constituents, they don't have any idea about the needs of those constituents because they're not among them. They don't live among them. They don't communicate with them. Some of them, I'm sorry to say, they live behind gates. They don't come out, they don't experience the crime levels that the average Bahamian experience. If they were experiencing the same thing, the fact that we all have to struggle to pay our bills, if they were experiencing these things, I feel that they would take the concerns of the constituents a whole, they pay greater attention to those needs.
Yeah. But that's a part of our challenge in the country all around, is that the experience of the well-to-do Bahamian is entirely different from the experience of the less well-to-do, right? It's our country is bifurcating, and everybody's moving along an entirely different track. There's a track now where once you get to a certain economic level, you do your kids do a couple of years, and then you send them off to boarding school to finish. And then the kids who are here, they even in the kids who can't afford to go to boarding school, there's still a split, where you ask yourself, if we say that education is a right, which we do say, and we say that it's the right of all Bahamians, then why is such a broad disparity between the high-achieving students and the non-achieving students? And why do the high-achieving students overwhelmingly come from the private school system?
Right.
There's a lesson there. There's something there that we are not learning as a country. And it is terrifying, because I am approaching middle age now. I'm 48 years old. God help us all, right? And
you look good.
Well, thank you, Fermi. So do you. That's very sweet of you. And I got a 60-year-old daughter who I have to leave this country too. And I hesitate to think of what kind of country she's going to inherit if things continue as they are.
That's right. That's right. We've got to put aside all of the things of the past, instead of forgetting those things that are behind. We've got to put aside our emotions. We've got to look at these candidates, as I said, pound for pound, flesh for flesh. We've got to look in these constituencies, and we've got to elect those persons that are best able to represent our needs and what we would like to see as constituents. I put it, as this concern of me, and we talk about funding, and in fact, because what funding does is that it forces you would see in the parties that they're electing or they're nominating a whole lot of people, the rich, I would say the elite, and it leaves out ordinary people. Because of the lack of funding, ordinary people aren't able to participate in the political process. For instance, we have a lot of community leaders. And one of the great things I always say, you want to find a great politician, go look for a community leader, that one who is organizing on the ground. You see, find those type of people, those people who have been in the service business all along. I'm an attorney, but it is, this thing about us always electing an attorney, it's good, but we also, if it's an attorney, let that be an attorney that has shown great service, service to the community. And so we have to start looking at the qualities and the character and the integrity of these candidates, as opposed to, this one just come from this family, or, this one just have this amount of money. And let's get to the big thing that people probably won't say, but I'm from Andros, right? I never scared. Who the number man supporting? You hear that a lot. The number man is supporting this person, so therefore they have to be the candidate because they're going to have a lot of monies. The number man is going to do that. We have to move our people away from that line of thinking.
That I referring to Austin is easier said than done.
Of course. But it takes education, and the media has a role to play. Quincy, the media has a role to play in terms of educating our public, putting out candidates out there that is offering visions. Those candidates, a lot of them, sometimes the better ones, maybe not be ones that have the capacity to come on these talk shows when the bigger parties are buying out all of the airtimes. The newspapers are running those big parties all the time, and your challenge, of course, we have social media and we get out there, and we do our best, but nothing replaces that ground, door to door. Get to know your candidates. And I always say on the ground in Andros, I do the work there. I work with my people continually. It's not a stop and end and, come back when it's election time. It's continual. And so even though those newspapers, your vision, the people on the ground, they know you, they know what you're capable of because you become a household name. And nobody complains about a good representative if they're doing the work. Let me say that in most instances.
Okay. We had mentioned, Charmy, that the PM is going to make a national address at 5.
Yes.
So what you said just now is a great place for us to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And we will pick up on the other side of the PM's address.
Sure.
We'll finish our discussion, but I suspect that he might give us something else to talk about.
Let's hear. I think he's talking about vaccines, so we were interested in hearing what he has to say.
Yeah, let's step aside and we'll listen to the Prime Minister and talk about it on the other side of this.
Absolutely.
Stick around? You'll stick around for us?
I will, definitely. I'm most interested in hearing.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we're going to step aside now for the PM, and we'll be back after this.
On behalf of the people and government of the Bahamas, I thank the government of India for its generous assistance. The vaccines were pre-qualified by the World Health Organization, WHO, the Emergency Use Listing, EUL, approved by the WHO. The vaccines have also received certification from the Caribbean Regulatory System, CRS. The procedures used in the WHO EUL approvals process are rigorous and are aimed at ensuring the utmost safety and efficacy of the vaccine. As I have previously stated, the Bahamas will only accept vaccines that are pre-qualified for use by the WHO and have received EUL and Emergency Use Authorization, EUA approvals. The vaccines will be stored at the National Immunization Cold Storage Facility in New Providence and transferred to other islands as required. This state-of-the-art cold storage facility is a secure, temperature-controlled, clean, and protected environment. The temperature of the facility can be monitored remotely and has a backup generator supply. Fallback facilities have also been identified. The National Storage Facility has the capacity to safely store hundreds of thousands of vaccines. And to ensure maximum security, it will be under 24-hour guard by the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Ladies and gentlemen, vaccines are designed to teach the body's immune system to safely recognize and block a virus that causes a disease. The Astrozenica vaccine is a viral vector vaccine. This means that the virus has been altered so that it behaves like the COVID-19 virus, but does not cause the disease. The Astrozeneca vaccine is administered in 2 doses. Like other vaccines, side effects observed included mild pain and tenderness at the injection site, fatigue, and mild fever. These are very common side effects of vaccines and are a sign that the body is building immunity. As with any vaccine, serious side effects are possible, but extremely rare. According to medical literature, no one who received the AstraZeneca vaccine was hospitalized or became seriously ill due to COVID-19. Millions of people have already received the AstraZeneca vaccine globally. We know from the results that this vaccine will save lives. Fellow Bahamians and residents, the rollout of the first 20,000 doses is expected to begin days after the arrival of the vaccine. Because we are receiving the vaccine doses in smaller batches, we will deviate from the original plan slightly. Those eligible to receive these first doses will be in the public and private sectors. Residents and staff of elder care homes and non-ambulatory residents registered in the public health system. The first and critical priority group includes those who are our first-line defense against the COVID-19 virus, and those among the most vulnerable in our population. It is expected that healthcare workers may begin booking their vaccination appointments online within days of the arrival of the vaccine. Details on how the appointment process will work will be published within the next few days. Healthcare workers will be vaccinated on site at their respective institutions. Residents and staff of elder care homes and the registered non-ambulatory will be required to make an appointment. Mobile units will be used to vaccinate residents and staff of elder care homes and the non-ambulatory on site on New Providence and Grand Bahama. On the Family Islands, medical teams will administer vaccines to healthcare staff on the island and at elder care homes and to the non-ambulatory. A phased approach must be applied to all islands in this first batch. At this stage, vaccines will be administered in phases on New Providence, Grand Bahama, and the Family Islands. The Ministry of Health and the National COVID-19 Vaccine Consultative Committee have developed a distribution plan to ensure a smooth and seamless rollout of the vaccine and to ensure equity in the distribution of the vaccine. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to report that we have received a commitment from the Pan American Health Organization through the COVAX facility. The Bahamas will receive 33,600 doses of the Astrozeneca vaccine before the end of March. These doses, 100,800 doses, which were announced last month and secured through the Bahamas prepayment of the COVAX facility. We have been informed that the remaining 64,200 doses through COVAX are expected to arrive in the Bahamas by the end of May 2021. Vaccines are in extreme demand globally and are difficult to secure. This means we have to be prepared to adjust as necessary based on the availability of the vaccine. We have had to be flexible throughout the pandemic. It is important that we continue to exercise patience during this process. We are fortunate to receive these vaccines. We are working aggressively and on several fronts to secure vaccines from approved providers as quickly as possible. Fellow Bahamians, we have endured for almost a year through this awful pandemic. COVID-19 changed our way of life, harmed our economy, and sadly killed 182 Bahamians. We mourn all those who lost their lives to this virus. We continue to pray for their families. Though this journey has been difficult, we have learned over this long and difficult year how to fight this virus together as a people and as a government. We put in place public health measures such as wearing masks and limitations on mass gatherings. The Bahamian people have largely complied with these rules. When cases have gone up, we tightened measures to save lives. When the cases reduced, we responsibly loosened the measures to allow more openness. Consequently, the Bahamas has had many consecutive months of low case numbers. I admire the discipline of Bahamians who understood this. Our opponents in the opposition opposed at critical moments the life-saving measures that have enabled the country to keep this virus under control. That is their choice. But as your Prime Minister, and because of my professional training and experience, I will always think first of saving lives. Every decision we made during this crisis was to protect you, the Bahamian people. The pandemic is not over. As leaders around the world know, we cannot just get rid of all the health measures in one swoop. We cannot just get rid of the curfew in New Providence as the leader of the opposition recently suggested. If we stop being careful, the virus will spread more, and more people will get sick and subsequently die. Several of our Caribbean neighbors are currently having a difficult time with the virus. They have significant spread. Cases have gone up. More hospitalizations and deaths are occurring at this very moment. In North America, after a period of decline, there are fears that cases may rise again due to mutations of the virus. As we continue to responsibly open up gradually, we must remain cautious to prevent further spread. Federal leaders and authorities in the United States continue to emphasize the need to continue to wear masks, to avoid larger gatherings, even as vaccines are being rolled out across the country. Fellow Bahamians and residents, our path out of the emergency phase of the pandemic is twofold. First, we must maintain our public health practices. Second, we must vaccinate our population. Health officials and the consultative committee will continue to provide regular updates on the continued rollout of the vaccine. Please pay attention to updates that will confirm when it will be your turn to receive the vaccine and when you will be able to make your appointment for the vaccine. As we have said repeatedly, the vaccine is not mandatory, but I urge everyone to take the vaccine as soon as you are eligible to do so. Vaccines save millions of lives every year around the world. It is important that all eligible Bahamians and residents come forward and take the vaccine. Let me say again, the COVID-19 vaccines we will use in the Bahamas are safe. They were scientifically tested. They have already been given to millions of people around the world. Could save your life and that of your loved ones, friends, and neighbors. The more of us who take the vaccine, the more we can reopen our economy, including to tourists and visitors. This will create more jobs and expand working hours. Tourists will want to travel to places where the virus is under control. With low COVID numbers and a high number of us taking the vaccine, we can begin to welcome the world back to our shores in high numbers. If we are disciplined and take the vaccine, our country will be even more attractive to tourists, especially from our leading tourism market, the United States. If we refuse the vaccine and there is a resurgence of the virus, fewer visitors will come to the Bahamas. This virus will not magically disappear. It is highly infectious, and there are new variants. These new mutations are dangerous and easier to catch. Fellow Bahamians and residents, to prevent COVID-19 from ravaging a society and economy, countries have to vaccinate large portions of their populations as soon as possible. This is a global pandemic that has claimed more than 2.5 million lives. It has caused hardship to millions of people. As you have seen in the international news of late, it is also likely in the near future that you will need proof that you have been vaccinated to be able to travel. As I have said before, please ignore the fake news about COVID-19 vaccines. Lies and misinformation are being spread on the internet and social media. And this nonsense is designed to make you afraid of vaccines. Get your information from credible local and international sources, rather than spreading misinformation. Let us encourage each other to take the vaccines so we can get back to more normal lives as soon as possible. Encourage your families, friends, and co-workers to get vaccinated. I will take the vaccine. I will encourage my family, friends, and colleagues to do the same. The start of our vaccination campaign marks the beginning of the end of the emergency phase of the pandemic. There will be challenges ahead. However, as we vaccinate increasing numbers of our people, we will gradually and responsibly move away from one of the most difficult periods in living memory. Not being able to see the people we love as much as we would want has been hard. Living under the fear of a deadly virus has been hard. Grieving to those close to us who died from the virus has been hard. Getting vaccinated is the way for us to begin to start to end these difficult and hard times. And when your time comes, I ask each eligible Bahamian and resident to come forward and get vaccinated. Your willingness to receive this safe protection will help to end this pandemic. Let us encourage each other in a national spirit of love, of unity, of generosity. My brothers and sisters, I want to again thank all of those on the front line battling this deadly pandemic. At the appropriate time, we will have a National Day of Remembrance and Thanksgiving. We must remember those we have lost and their families. We must also recall in gratitude the blessings of Almighty God, and recall in gratitude the many Bahamian heroes who brought us through one of the most difficult periods in our national journey. After many dark days and nights, there is light on the horizon. Let us work together to kindle this light and to make it grow even brighter by continuing to show kindness and care to others, by observing the healthcare measures, by taking one of the vaccines in order to help to secure the common good, and by always having a spirit of gratitude for life itself. May God bless all of our courageous men and women on the front lines of the pandemic. As I prayed in my last national address, during this Lenten season, let us pray to the God of new beginnings for recovery and for healing. As we look forward in the hope of Easter, to resurrection and to new life in Christ. May God bless you and your loved ones. Thank you and good afternoon.
Is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, as a matter of fact, and welcome back to the Political Review. Parker, and I am delighted to be with you once again, following the national address by the Most Honorable Dr. Hubert Minnis, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, who had some good news about the vaccines and the vaccine, singular, and joining us once again to complete our conversation and to have a bit of a chew up over what the Prime Minister had to say. We welcome back Shami Farrington Austin, the former Data Protection Commissioner, a champion of the freedom of information, and a champion of women in politics. And Shami, welcome back. Thou shalt unmute thy microphone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Awesome.
So, okay. I heard a couple of interesting things in there. But what I didn't hear was when the vaccine coming.
Yes. I think they said it was delayed for a few days, so I thought he may have given us a definite date.
But that did not happen.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. So let's set that aside and look at the positives from the speech, the address, which amount to an assurance, I guess, of the quality of the Astrozenica vaccine and a promise that the first people to get it will be the frontline defenders against the COVID fight. And he also mentioned that the amount of vaccine that is coming is not what we anticipated. So the schedule of the rollout is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But he also talked about the National Cold Storage Facility and the fact that people in the government industries, I think, are going to be able to be vaccinated at their place of work. He took a big swing when he said that the beginning of the vaccination process is the beginning of the end of the emergency section or segment or of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's a big swing. So I will put the question to you directly, and so that you could stop smiling at the camera, you got to tell me directly, what did you think of the Prime Minister's address?
Well, as I said, well, firstly, given the fact that I thought in reading that the vaccine will not be here as anticipated on the date, I wondered whether or not it was necessary to have the address today or whether or not it should have been moved back. But of course, I guess they found that it was expedient to remain on schedule. And I would have liked for the Prime Minister to give a definite date. I also, from my own point of view, would say to inspire confidence, I believe. I think he did indicate that he would be taking it, but I think to inspire confidence, there should be all of the members of Parliament, if they have confidence in this vaccine, they should, as a show of confidence in it, to inspire the greater citizenry to participate, let them all line up and take that vaccine. That is my view on that. I thought that he talked a lot about, I guess, how it will be the vaccine. Him being a doctor, I suppose he was able to go into it a lot about how it will be kept, the vaccine, and some of the symptoms, and assuring the citizenry that perhaps you will feel slight symptoms, fever, etc. But let's keep in mind that our former Minister of Health, Dr. Dwayne Sands, would have said that he would have liked to see us do our own independent review of any vaccine that we will be using. And also, he had indicated that we have to take into consideration whatever the vaccine we decide to use. We have to look at our demographics and the, situation that is incidental to the Bahamas. And so I don't know whether or not the Prime Minister and the vaccine committee would have given any regard to anything that the former minister would have offered. We would hope so. But I certainly am looking forward to hearing that all of those ministers who would have brought the vaccine to the country, that they themselves are going to take it. I think that will go a long way in getting the populace to participate. I'm glad to hear line workers first, and that they will be given first priority with these vaccines. I do not know, because I'm not a healthcare professional, but I'm just saying, as the data commissioner, perhaps my experience as the data commissioner with how we look at India in terms of data protection has me a little, up. And I'm wondering, like, when I hear India, the vaccine is coming from India, I'm not going to cast any aspersion to say, well, they're not safe or they're not safe. I'm just hoping, like all other Bahamians, that these vaccines, I'm believing they were donated. Quincy, you can correct me, from India. I just want to know whether or not, really the Prime Minister's assured us that they are safe, but as Dr. Sanders, we won't really know until, we start testing out these vaccines.
No, but I hear you, but let me assist a moment. The Prime Minister said last week that the vaccines from India have undergone the same testing as the other AstraZeneca vaccines that we are looking forward to getting. So
let me ask you, since you're assisting, did you hear him put a specific, in terms of effective rate, like 99% effective? We know that some of those vaccines, those companies have put out some percentages as to the effectiveness. I didn't hear him mention it in the speech.
I think he very wisely stayed away from that because the minute you start that, then you're going to have 400,000 people go to Google and start trying to figure out how effective the vaccine that is here is going to be, rather than realizing that for it to be effective, you have to take it in the first place. And so people who are already skeptical and likely to pass on taking the virus will have yet one more reason for their skepticism.
But do you think that persons are not going to Google anyhow? I mean, the fact that it wasn't mentioned, that was one of the, I'm just saying, that's one of the first things that I noticed. I'm saying every time he came back to it, I said, okay, this time he's going to give us that.
Well, so clearly then, you yourself have already Googled, and you have information that you could share with my
I do not have, even if I had the information, I believe in getting the information, the correct information from the technical people. The vaccine, I believe, have a consultative committee. Am I right? The very experienced Dr. Dow Regis, and I wouldn't want to preempt them. I'm not a medical, professional, so I leave it to them. But I would think the Prime Minister being given the substantive address, that they would have handed that percentage to him.
And you are, I'm trying to parse through the words that you are using to find the words that you are not. Are you suggesting that the medical professionals will have given him a slip of paper that says the AstraZeneca virus is X% effective and he chose not to read it?
No, I am not saying, here's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, as the Prime Minister sitting where he is sitting, had I been sitting there, I know that I have a committee, and that will be one of the things that I would be interested in knowing how effective it was. And as I do have an understanding of how government ministries work, I would think that would be one of the, the first thing that those technocrats do. They do get the information. If they haven't gotten that information, I'd be very surprised and go further and suggest perhaps they should. Because at the end of the day, as the Prime Minister says, and he is maintaining that it is safe. So I am giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying he must have seen the percentage, the effective percentage, the rate of effectiveness would have had to cause him to be so confident in the safety of this vaccine here.
I feel like Ms. Sharmi Farrington Austin.
Yes, sir.
You are speaking from a position of you're a data protection commissioner type. You're a freedom of information type girl. You don't talk just to talk. So I feel like you know something and you ain't telling me. But you know.
I'm hearing the Prime Minister speak just like you for the first time. And, of course, you just ask the obvious questions. And there's certain things that just turns a light bulb on your head. And you go like, okay, this is the third time he's mentioning about the safety, and I'm sure he may have included it, I don't know, but I'm just saying to inspire confidence, that would have helped. It would have gone a long way, yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I mean, it's an interesting question, and I want to be careful that we're not engaging in pseudoscience, right? Mm-hmm. The COVID-19 vaccine that Astrozeneca has created it was proven 100% effective against severe disease, hospitalization, and death in the last trials before it went on the market. In terms of market research, it's obviously a little early in the game to know how effective it is in a world where actually treating people outside of the parameters of a study. And so I want to be careful that we wait for that information to come from the scientific sources.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm saying that I'm sure the committee will be looking at those things and be able to pass that on. I don't know when they will make themselves available to the public, or whether they have already made themselves available to the public to be questioned, but I'm certain that perhaps it's coming.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the very subtly a gauntlet has been laid down in front of the scientific committee regarding the vaccine. You should make yourselves available for public questioning. Now, Dr. Nakia Forbes has been, and Dr. Pearl McMillan, they've been, and DeLon Brennan too. They've all been and willing.
They're doing a pretty great job. Let me commend them. They're doing a fantastic job as Bahamians, and we applaud the work of those Bahamian medical professionals who've been on the front line. They've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I think they've been accessible, but it would be interesting to have a specific interaction or engagement just on
the vaccine itself. Yes.
So if you're listening, Dr. McMillan or Dr. Forbes or my boy DeLon Brennan, let's try and make that happen. That's something. Or Julie Terrell, I know you're listening. You can make that happen. So it was an interesting, very brief for a few minutes, half an hour presentation, not even half an hour. He gave some positive comments. He tried to give a positive the whole thing, but I think there is some critical information missing. When is the vaccine going to come? How much of it is coming? And those people who are, I just think those are really and truly those are the only two questions. When is it coming and how much? And then a second set of questions could be, can you talk to us about the safety of it?
Yes. Yes.
That'd be
Yes, and beyond that, I think going away from the vaccine, I think the Bahamian public is anxious to know when I think he hinted at it, we can see the end of these. Is there any light at the tunnel for the end of these emergency orders? I think he hinted at it, saying that the vaccine, and I'm paraphrasing, will have a great, influence on when we will see the end of those things. So we're wishing our Prime Minister well to say that, because he succeed, the country succeed. And of course, we do not play politics on these type of things. It's just that the information has to be forthcoming. And I think if you want to really build public confidence, you've got to be able to be at a place where the public can get accurate information, and there's this continual education on the subject, because people are going to be anxious. People are going to be nervous when they hear vaccine. And so we want to see our leaders talking to the people. I know that they've engaged the church, which I find to be very interesting. They've engaged church leaders. Oftentimes we hear that we don't want the church people saying anything about government and politics. So it's very interesting that they're seeking to get the church leaders to be the promoters of this vaccine. And so that in itself is very curious to me. And but for the good of the country, we all must come together and try to fight as hard as we can and as strong as we can against, which is affecting the world. It's bigger than the Bahamas.
Yeah, you have led me to the question of information and freedom of information. Just by virtue, I guess, of the conversation about what information the Prime Minister is and is not sharing. Given that is a special area of focus of yours, what say you about the status of freedom of information in the Bahamas right now?
Well, to be honest with you, when I was at another place as a data commissioner, I was a big advocate of establishing the freedom of information or enacting the freedom of information legislation. I personally would have thought that as a country we'd have been further ahead. We know that at the time we didn't have enact the regime, but I know from when I was there that the budget was being prepared. I was told to assist in accommodating the freedom of information regime. I would have thought by now we would have already educated how and identify information managers in most of our institution and our public institutions. So we see yet again this constant promising of the regime coming into existence, and it's not. I do know that the government has, I believe, brought to the Parliament that portion of the act or the bill that deals with the appointment of the Information Commissioner. We still are awaiting that. And of course, I think certain section with respect to the whistleblower was fought. The AG and the Prime Minister has given us various timelines so far, which all have not really lived up to. And it's a challenge, being realistic. Matter is in Caribbean jurisdiction, shared power is something that is approached with apprehension. Some people feel like if they open up the government information, they're going to lose that control, and
they're right. That's what they're afraid of.
And so there is this pushback, I think, but you just have to have willpower, as I said, to get these things done. Training is big. I thought that the training regime would have been well on the way. I thought we would have had an information commissioner appointed, all those things are things that we could do. We know that it will take a time for the society to get accustomed to having open governance, you see? And I feel that we should have been way ahead of the game now. And then yet again, we're heading into another general election. We don't know if the incoming administration, should they change, whether they'll go back as they did in the time past, because we had a Freedom of Information Act. And under the first act, we had both regimes work together. We had the data protection regime as well as the Freedom of Information regime under one act. And that was the regime under the last administration. The PLP was split down the middle, split in two. So now we have the data protection regime and the Freedom of Information regime across the world. They had moved away from that model. Most of the civilized countries realized that it was best to have both of them under one regime to bring balance. So you have competing rights, so to speak. And so it was thought, experiments or experience have shown that it's best when those regimes operate under one umbrella. But nonetheless, we have two regimes. The legislation is there, and we look forward to the day when I would say a courageous enough government would be able to just go ahead and say, just get it done.
Yeah, just pull the trigger, get it done.
Yes.
It is a thing that once it happens, I believe the question will be, so why did it take so long? And what was the big deal? What is it that people were afraid of? Because honestly, it's almost as if we have a Freedom of Information Act now, the way things leak from places of power, and so it would be smart to create a proper channel for access to information, so that civil servants don't have to be suborned by people looking for information and corrupted, rather than just say, here's the process for you to get the information you're after.
Well, I think honestly, just I've said this before when we talk about freedom of information and people having public information available to them, we tend only to think about journalists and all the journalists want the information. But beyond that, it's good to have it because then it puts government in the hands of the ordinary citizens. They can make informed decisions. They can understand how their government works. They can know how their government monies are being used. For instance, the simple example I like to give, they can know where are the parks in their areas, how much money is being spent on the park, and those kinds of things that the ordinary citizen Joe public won't be able to get, they're now able to get. And so open governance, of course, forces then the sitting administration or governments everywhere, they are going to think twice about how they do business, because they know then that information is going to be available to the public, and hence perhaps their reluctance to remove information in the Bahamas. But we hope it's done sooner than later.
It better be, I think, because as we were talking earlier about the changing electorate, I think that it is becoming an expectation now of the young voter or the older voter who wants a freer society, that freedom of information legislation is just it's par for the course. It should not be a big deal. It should not be something that you have to fight for. It is. We are coming into a place where I believe people think it's their right.
Well, we know that this administration promised it on almost day one. I know the Minister of Education is on record saying that it will be done almost immediately within the first 100 days of. That is what they promised, and we go right back to this is what they promised. These are some of the promises this incumbent administration has said that it will do. And I think the Bahamian people, as we know, we're on Facebook, you're on social media, we're reading the comments, they're expecting this government to get it done. Now, they have a short time to get that done before the election, general election is mandated. But we wait to see if they will have the willpower to do it, or yet again, the mantle is pressed down the road again for another government or for if they are repeated. If this government is reelected, they'll wait for that term, but it remains to be seen. I'm hopeful, as Minister Quincy Thompson said, that they have a number of things and promises that they will deliver within the upcoming year that they have promised. So we wait to see what they will be.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yes. Can I move you, of course, to something that I've been asking you to speak about, which is passionate to me, about women affairs, of course, before I leave, because this is International Women's,
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yes.
I had two more questions before that.
Go ahead.
You sure?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. First is, in terms of I wanted to finish off your candidacy.
Mhm.
In terms of as a person, what is candidacy like for a person?
Well,
To
of
be
course, go ahead. Candidacy,
to be asked those questions. What's that like?
what's candidacy like? Of course, I always say for those who are called to service, it's like a normal job. For me, I can speak specifically. When you put yourself out and offer yourself, it's like doing what I normally do, serving, finding ways to serve and meet the needs of people. I come from a church background, was actually, read by a political and a church family. So for me, it was really normal, continuing on the work that I've been doing all of my life. But I can tell you, it is very demanding. You're called upon, you have to make sacrifices. Lots of times you're gone from your family, Quincy. Very, very, I think the Bahamian public do not sufficiently understand the level of sacrifice it takes for someone to put themselves out there as a candidate. You're gone all the time, particularly to your constituents. You're meeting their needs and not necessarily those for your family. Sometimes they're put on the sideline, and you try to balance as best as you can those two things. It also means that, for me, I know that you always have to be careful of your people are more prone now to attack you. They're always looking for ways to find, to attack your integrity. And one of my spiritual moms says to me, the best thing you can do is try to live above reproach every day. Just try to do your best, knowing that people now, the eyes of the public are on you. People are going to lie on you. They're going to say some of the most colorful things that you can even think of. You have to have a broad shoulder, and you have to understand that you've been called to serve. And I think there's no greater feat than to serve your people, to be called to serve the citizens of this country, be it in whatever constituency. That in itself is, for me, the ultimate reward. When you get to go there, you get to sit with the citizens, especially young people that I've met, and you're sitting down, you're talking, and they're sharing their vision, their dreams with you, and you're assisting them in making that a reality. A lady that I met in South Andres, and I got a call, said to help this young lady, she needs help. And it was the usual type, can you give her a few dollars because she's need help? And I remember calling her into the office, and I said to her, well, I can give you this couple of dollars, but this is going to go. What is it that you really want to do? And she said, do you know I want to be a lawyer? And I was like, really? And she said, I said, well, bring me your transcript. And Quincy, that young lady, she had a 3.8 something GPA coming out of South Andres High. Oh, wow. Really? And I said, wow, I said, you really want to do this? And she said, yes. So I walked her through the process at CLB. She enrolled in their law program. I'm so proud of her. And I'm sure she don't mind me calling her name. Vandia Sands. She's like my adopted daughter now. And she's been engaged in the program at Cave Hill. And so she's soon about to be called as an attorney. So it's those joys when you go out there and you've discovered people like, and this business of service is all about impacting lives. A lot of people do it from ambition. You see a lot of candidates, they just want to be the member of parliament. They just want to get into that seat. They want to be among the elites to show that it's not about impacting the life of those constituents. But when you go door to door and you find that fisherman who wants to really own a fishing business, and you can connect those persons to other people who are in the fishing industry, it's really, really rewarding. So the sacrifice you have to make in terms of being away from your family, having to have broad shoulder. Oh my God, it's vicious out there, particularly now. I think this is perhaps one of the most cannibalistic season we've seen so far. And that in itself is a disappointment, because we thought that in the 21st century, we would have moved away from this cannibalistic scandal type politics. It goes to the leaders channel the country according to their vision. And the fact, I say this very respectfully, the fact that we see such a cannibalistic approach makes me wonder about the type of leadership we had at the helm, because I think true leaders and great leaders are able to channel their supporters in a way that it's productive to the country, where we see more of a visionary approach as opposed to this cannibalistic type of politics. So I would say the candidacy is it has its reward and it has its challenges, you know.
All right. I really want to dig into that another time, mainly because it is International Women's Day.
Yes.
Tomorrow. And,
yes.
And the theme is hashtag choose to challenge.
Choose to challenge. Yes.
I wanted to, I know you wanted to talk about it. Women in politics, what are your thoughts?
Wow. I think about every time we talk about women, we have to mention those great women, our foremothers, the suffragettes, that fought for the right for women to vote in the Bahamas in 1962. We attained that right to vote. And I've often said that we have gained we've made some stride, but I also feel the state of women in politics as it presently, it would appear that we would have regressed. And the reason being that at one point we had 4 to 5 women in the cabinet. And I remember Prime Minister Ingram making history when he did his 4 women in cabinet at the same time, 4 women cabinet minister. Then I think Prime Minister Christie came along and did 5. But you know, politics, though, you did one person always one ups, right? And I think we were at a height of achieving. We know that Dame Doris, who was the first minister with a portfolio in the Senate, and so we had come a long way. Now we see we've come to a point where we have one woman in the cabinet. A few days ago, we were horrified when we realized that, listen, we were very concerned that there was no woman in the cabinet owing to Minister Rowe, Lanisha Rowe, resigning. And so it left us without a voice around the table. And it is important for women, for us to be around the table, for our voices to be heard. And people say, how much more do you want? Because you have a lot of women, in supporting role. And I find, Quincy, even when we're talking about this, a lot of our women are very timid in articulating what is it that we want. And I am not timid in articulating what is it that we want. We are coming for that blue chair that Dr. Minnis sit in the Prime Minister's office. Our aim is to make that blue chair into a pink chair. Our aim is to actually build on the work of our foremothers and to actually, we will not stop until we see a woman sitting in that chair as Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, not because she's equally qualified and capable, and there should be no decision-making table that is minus a woman, that there's not a presence of a woman. We often say that even in the garden, the Lord realized a man could not be there alone. It was not good for a man to be there alone, so he placed a woman there. And so as women, we are challenging the status quo. We are challenging every table that does not have a woman around it. Our challenge is to make sure that the voices of women are being heard around those tables. And in 2022, we are challenging, we see that the ratification is almost complete, and there hasn't been a lot of women, according to the 2 major parties, being put forward. This is why, again, it's important to have independent candidates step forward, an independent candidate to supplement those 2 parties.
Friend of mine, Alex Chart, and his chart showed that I think it was something like 16% of the candidates are women.
Yeah, it's unacceptable because we know the goal is a minimum of 30%. That our women organization like Seville and Women United, we are advocating for a minimum of 30%. We know full equality is 50%, but we are advocating for a minimum of 30% of women in the House, in the Parliament. You know, this is not something I think
19%.
Yeah, we don't need to be begging for it. It is our rights. We consider the fact that 51 to almost 55%, I believe now, of the electorate are women. And so I've said it again, until we get on one accord as women and cause it to happen, until we lobby our parties to change the party's Constitution, to change the Constitution, bring equality for women. We will be forever begging, begging you, Quincy, to let us have this conversation, at the end. The fact is, Rwanda, I like to use them a time ago. They were intentional. They went ahead and they were intentional in changing their constitution to ensure that women were around the table. The interesting experiment they did there was that they reserved certain seats for women, and those seats were voted in by women organizations. And it was a good way of encouraging women even to get involved with their civic organizations. So women who were registered with those civic organizations, they were allowed to vote for their representative in the parliament. And that is something I think we've got to move towards to ensure that women voices are being heard. Because let's face it, unless we change the system, the pressure is on that woman to vote for her party if they wish to see their prime minister elected, or their party system itself does not lend itself really to full woman participation in the way that it should. So we've got to lobby our parties. The parties will only take us serious when Dame Johnson says no taxation without representation. When women are prepared to withdraw their labor from their political party if they are not properly reflected on those election ballots, if they're not getting the proper percentage, women reach to the point to say, if you are not going to properly represent us, we are not going to come and do the work of the party. And let's face it, who do the work of the party for the most part? Quincy, isn't it the women? It's
all women.
Always the women. So we've got to get tough on these all-male party candidate list that we see. I mean, it's very discouraging from where I sit. And you would think that we're in the 21st century, again, I say, and you thought that we would have gone even, we have regressed. We had a full cabinet minister, now we have a minister of state. And no disrespect to our minister, Lakeisha Parker Etchcombe, who I thought represented the views of the women very well. In her response, she said that she did not want to be the lone woman, and she would do her best to include the voices of women. But it's unacceptable, Quincy, that we are heading to 2022 under these men with minimal, very bare, scant women representative. And my challenge to the women is, what are we going to do? We have to register our disappointment. We have to find ways across the party line to strongly object to this I call underrepresentation of women in the cabinet. We've got to find strong women that we can support, put out there, and put our help. One of them being, of course, I'm perhaps going to be accused of, political, but I am not. I'm talking about Mrs. Glennis Hannah Martin. I think she enjoyed the support of women from my experience across the political divide. Women look up to her. We see her as a champion of the women. And so many other women, Podesta Moore, I can think of a number of them that are reaching across the political divide to affect change.
In Austin, I am out of time.
I know, right?
I'm in fact a little bit over time. So still some time for the next guy, because I thought what we were talking about was important. I apologize.
I appreciate that. But I wanted to talk about that as the first subject.
Yeah, but this is a political show, so my last question before Wally cut us off. Why did you run for the PLP and not the FNM?
Why did I what?
Run for the PLP and not the FNM.
When was this? I never ran for the PLP.
You know what I mean.
Never the PLP. I would say this much. I feel that I am a candidate. I'm a statesman. I believe in putting my country first. I'm looking even now to see what are the visions that are being put out. And it's the vision that is going to attract me, like I said, to a party again. I'm looking at all of these major parties to see what are their vision plan. And of course, taking instructions from my supporters who are constantly advising me to take certain position. But it's going to be the vision of the party that will attract me. What is their vision? What new ideas they're bringing? Of course, what are they talking about? The change in the system of government. These are the kind of things it would take to attract me to a party. They got to be talking about the change of the system. They've got to be talking about the diversification of the economy. They have to be talking about economic independence. Did you hear any of these parties talking about these things yet, Quincy? In a real way, I'm talking about. I'm not talking about lip service. I'm talking about in a real way.
As I was about to say, I will leave you to do your own research on it.
I will. My ears are open. I know that the PLP is doing something with their leaders about, I think, the economics. So I'll kind of go and find it and see what they have to say. I'm listening out for the Free National Movement and the Democratic National Alliance. Thank you. I'm getting it in.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay, so.
Shami, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Very much welcome.
People enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to having you back.
Yes, let's do this again. Very soon, my friend.
All right, great.
Okay.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here at the Political Review this Sunday, March 7th, 2021. God have mercy, it's 2021. It's 20.
That's what it is.
It is the third month of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Time is flying, ladies and gentlemen. Time is flying. Anyway, God bless. We'll see you soon. See you next week. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.